Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Noxcast, an award-winning Equinox news recap podcast. I'm your host, Charlotte King, the managing executive editor of the Equinox.
And I'm Nathan Hope. I'm the administrative executive editor of the Equinox, and this week we are joined by our photo editor, Alana.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. The one quick announcement that we have, you might have noticed I threw it in the intro, but this is now an award-winning podcast. We recently had the New Hampshire Press Association award ceremony here at Keene State, and we were very fortunate to, as a whole, as an organization, do very well in the multimedia / podcast / video category. But this podcast, one of our previous episodes, the one right after the presidential election where we talked with President Melinda Treadwell, that received the second place honor in that category. So I'm very pleased and very honored. So thank you to NHPA as well as President Treadwell for being our guest on that week. But yeah, exciting stuff. And overall, congratulations as well to Jake Velasquez and Jakob Hall, our multimedia team, who also received honors in that category. But yeah, so we have Alana on, our photo editor. So as is sort of customary, I wanted to just sort of let you talk a little bit about what you do as photo editor and what your experience has been like.
Yeah, the experience has been great so far. I edit all the photos for the Equinox each week. I take all the assignments for the week given to me, and I put them into the budget, and I hand them out to all of my staff photographers, and then I take the photos that I have to take for the week, and I edit those, and then I edit all the photos that are sent to me by my staff photographers, and I handle all the camera checkout and check-in for the Equinox.
Right. So it's a big job, and so we're very grateful to have had Alana for a while as photo, because otherwise we would be hurting really bad because, obviously the reporting is a huge part of what we do, but also if we didn't have, good visuals to go along with that, it wouldn't be much of a paper. One of the stories in student life this week, which is not part of our overall top story recap, but I still want to give you the chance to talk about the photos you took for Sex Toy Bingo. It's one of the big events annually coming from FemCo, the Feminist Collective. And, I think it's something that a lot of people just look forward to. It's very, it's a little goofy in a way, but I think it does, really have that core of just being empowering for people and breaking some of the stigma around that. But so what was that experience like taking photos there?
Yeah, Sex Toy Bingo is always a very interesting event to cover. I didn't take the photos for it last year, I think. I might have taken it the year before. But it's always fun to see people's reactions to the event, and it's a fun event. It's a cool event to cover, and I had fun taking photos for it.
In terms of the photos that Alana took for this week's paper, I wanted to start off by talking about kind of the big one that I feel like everybody's going to want to talk about. Spring concert was this past Sunday. Waka Flocka came to the Mabel Brown Room along with opener Free Daps. We were there as well, Nate and I. But yeah, Alana, I also just wanted to have you talk a little bit about the experience of photographing the spring concert, both of those acts, and what that was like.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was a really cool experience, and I've never done anything like that before. And I took pictures alongside Nicole, who also is working for the Equinox as social media director. And we stood in front of the barricade, and it was really cool to be so close to the artists and to get pictures of that sort.
Yeah, definitely. And they came out amazing. I love the colors. I love just how, you really feel, because for those who might not have been there, Waka Flocka Flame in particular was he just launched himself into the crowd, was very present, very interactive, but I feel like the photos really kind of capture that sense of being right there, really being right next to him. And so we were able to do a lot of cool stuff with the layout for that, in terms of, the masthead. So shout out to news editor Tim, and then of course the story itself with a big sort of photo package and the cutout and everything. So shout out to A&E editor Haley. But I love getting to do cool stuff like that and really play around with the way that the photos interact with the text story.
Yeah, as like a private citizen who attended the concert, not as a journalist, but it was such a good show. Waka Flocka's like stage presence the whole time was just amazing. The interaction with like the crowd, just sort of like, he like brought someone up on stage at one point. I was like, it was such a good time. And like, I think like, yeah, definitely the photos came out like super well. And I always love like the big layouts with like events like Spring Concert where we get to see that intersection between photo, but then the reporting and then like the design on the page sort of like all comes together into like this package. It's like one of my favorite things to see. So I was very happy with sort of just how everything turned out. And props to Zach for putting on the Spring Concert. It was a lot of work, needless to say. And props to our news editor, Tim, for stepping in last minute and working security for Zach.
Yeah. There was a funny interaction where it was like, we heard that they were looking for people to work security, and Tim was like, I'm around. And also, I know it's a long list of shout outs, but I also wanted to mention copy editor Justin, who helped us out with getting the interviews for the article from some of the attendees. It was kind of a last minute thing, but stepped up to the plate. And so we're always grateful. But yeah, I also was there just to have fun. And I definitely agree. I think Waka was great. Free Daps was a lot of fun too. They're funny guys, but it was also just very interactive. But yeah, a great concert all around.
I did want to just ask you sort of like what it's like taking photos in general for like these like performance type events and stuff, and like what you sort of look to capture at an event like this.
Yeah, so when I'm taking photos at concerts specifically, I try to get the audience in the photo as well and try to capture the movement of all of it, which is kind of tough because when you're taking pictures using a camera, I learned how to use the Sony that we have. Nicole taught me how to use it like right before the concert, and I'm very glad that it worked out because I was very nervous about that. But it was my first time using the camera, and it is a lot better at taking pictures in the dark. But yeah, it was a really cool experience to use that camera and to capture the moments. And I try to get the emotions from the audience in the pictures because people want to see how people felt. Something that I thought was really cool about that concert is that he jumped over the barricade and like was in the audience. I was not expecting that. I like stood at the end of the barricade on a step and like lifted the camera up. My arms were getting sore, but it was really cool.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was really like expecting that. Something that was mentioned in the article is that I think everybody was, you have the moment of being taken aback and then the following moment of like, let's go. Like, this is hype. So yeah, no, awesome stuff. And I feel like the whole thing came together really well. I love big events and being able to just have some fun with them. One of Elena's other photo assignments from this week is the track and field 4x100 relay team breaking the 50-year-old record. A lot of broken record stories coming through these past few weeks, but the additional piece of this is that Elena is one of our track athletes, and so as well as also just a sports photographer in your own right. So once again, I want to turn that over to you and just let you talk about that.
Yeah, so that photo was actually really hard for me to get for some reason. But my team, so we went to a track meet this past weekend, and I had planned on taking that picture at the meet, but Aiden Law didn't compete this weekend because he's preparing for LECs, and he's going to go long past LECs. So he took that weekend off. So I was like, oh no, I can't do it at the meet in uniform, which would have been cool. But I had him meet me when we got back from the meet with the boys in the throws room that we have. So that was really fun. I'm really proud of those boys. They have broken so many records recently, and I'm like shocked to see how well they're doing. And I think it's really cool that they're getting recognition for it.
definitely. It's been awesome to just see and be able to continuously kind of spotlight, the success coming out of there. I feel like we've seen Aiden in the paper like every paper now for past I don't even know how many weeks. But so yeah, major congrats. I mean, it's a huge just accomplishment and something to really kind of go down in history. I did also want to ask you just a little bit about your experience overall with like sports photography, because I know that that's something that you're passionate about, and again, what the experience is with that, in particular with like Keene State sports.
Yeah, the only photos that I've taken for sports so far are through the Equinox. So I've taken some like personally, but it's really cool to be able to see my photos printed in the paper, and to be able to use that for my portfolio. This coming summer, I'm going to be doing an internship with the Nashville Silver Knights and doing baseball photography. I'm really excited about that. And then in the fall of next year, in addition to working with the Equinox, I'll be doing a sports photography and social media internship for the athletics department.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll look out for those. But also, I think in terms of sports photography, like you mentioned with the performance photography, like the ability to capture like the movement and the emotion, and I think like across the photos that you've done for the Equinox, in terms of like that's something that carries over as well. I don't know. I always think it's cool to see like the parallels. Like obviously, it's two very different sections and two very different contexts, but like the common threads between like what makes a really just like what makes a photo really pop.
Yeah, I think like the sports is like a very like visual section for sure, and that's like one of the areas where like you always are looking out for like really solid photos because like looking at the layout, just like sort of like things also when it's like in midair too. You're looking at like baseball where like the ball just got pitched and it's about to be hit or something like that's a really hard shot to get, and like sort of that added like movement aspect and like things are going at such like a fast pace in like certain sports where it's like I don't know, it's really impressive to me because I've never taken sports photography, but just like from outside looking in, it's such like an important piece of what we do, and so it's very useful to like have you tackle a lot of those assignments, and then also having someone on like the track team who like can wrangle a bunch of people together for like a feature photo. It's not easy to do to get like multiple people in one place at one time. So that's also a very important part is getting those like feature photos. But I'm always very impressed.
Thank you. I love taking pictures that capture movement and important moments. It's cool.
Yeah, definitely. And certainly like, with sports, in particular, I think like it can be hard to try and keep tabs on like every team and what all these different, athletes are accomplishing and everything. So, the athletes that we have on our e-board and on staff, it is definitely helpful to sometimes be like, is there anything going on that we like don't know about yet, that we should go have somebody look into, and talk about, because just it never hurts to have our to have eyes on different areas of that world. With that, I think we can step into the rest of our recap here. So from news this week, we have an article from copy editor Chloe about some of the prospective changes coming to KSC dining and the meal plans that are offered to students. And it looks like across the board, basically, there's an effort here to kind of incentivize students to go to the dining commons more so than relying exclusively on like Lloyd's Marketplace and the Hoot and Scoot. Just overall with like a decrease in meal plan dollars that are usable at those more kind of food court style locations, and in some cases a fairly sizable increase in the meal swipes that are valid at the dining commons. I'm curious to see how people are going to react to this. I think that, I understand that some of the credit requirements that are in place for the meal plans are like already pretty standard. And I get, wanting to have, allowing greater freedom for people as they continue throughout their school career to be like, hey, like you're a little bit older, maybe you're looking at more seriously working off campus or whatever, like, do your thing basically. But just in terms of incentivizing the DC so strongly, like I kind of would expect that there are probably going to be a lot of students who, hit back at that and say like, well, I want to be allowed to eat wherever I want to eat. Like, I don't want to be told, that I have to go to the DC. Like, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this shakes out.
Yeah, from what I've heard so far, people are not super happy about it. Some people are fine with it. I'm going to be graduating most likely in the winter, so I'm not going to be affected by it for long. But yeah.
Yeah, like from what I know, and I'm just like a commuter student, so I haven't had to get a meal plan or anything, but I definitely do have a sense of like students generally gravitate more towards like Lloyd's Marketplace and the Hoot and Scoot and like the Sizzler area. So I'm not sure how it will be received, and I wonder if there's like any flexibility at all depending on like student feedback after, hearing about like the potential implementation of this plan. And I also wonder if there's going to be like any initiatives to like spruce things up at like the Zorn or something in order to make it more appealing, given that they're trying to incentivize it more. I think there's definitely some like questions remaining, but I'm glad to have like gotten the article out there in terms of like the baseline of what they're proposing here and what will likely go into effect. Yeah.
Yeah, I I am becoming aware that we're a room full of students who overall are like not likely to be that impacted by this. You're likely graduating early. It's a commuter, and I'm entering my 5th year, I guess. I don't know. I'm a transfer student. It's not, I don't know. But so I'm probably just not going to have a meal plan next year. So, we don't necessarily have the most to say out of anybody, but I definitely, I do think that the sense that Nate describes of how people feel about the difference between these spaces is, matches the sense that I've gotten and that I've had over my time as somebody who does have a meal plan. And I do wonder, but I also wanted to give a shout out to Chloe for doing some good, just like dining beat reporting. She's been on a lot of these stories about what's going on in that department. And I always love to see people just really become familiar with a beat. And then also, I had left a comment on the document telling Tim, like, this would be a good one for an infographic. So if you have the thought to cook something up, we'll see how it works out. And he did. He pulled together a nice little like bar chart that shows like, here's where the plans were at this year, and here's what they're looking like they're going to be at next year, as well as always the awesome graphic from Elijah. So yeah, altogether good stuff. From Region and State this week, we have a piece from the Sentinel about the minister at the Universalist Church. That's a place that I've like walked by several times, and they've got lots of like flags and other just sort of signage over there, and I've always just kind of wondered what they're about. I'm not particularly familiar with really any denomination personally, but certainly I hadn't heard much about this one. But I thought this was a nice, just kind of featurey piece, just meeting this minister who seems to have the main goal of trying to just make people feel included. That's always something that I can get behind. And it's interesting to read about like sort of her background versus where she is now, and the relationship that she has with the community that seems to still be growing. And so I don't know. I thought it was sweet. And so I decided to pick this one up for region and state.
Yeah, we naturally like gravitate more towards like Sentinel stories when looking at like what to put in region and state. This week was a little bit different because the city of Keene got a full page ad in the paper, and thank you for that. But yeah, this is like we just thought sort of that a lot of students see that church and sort of walk by it and might have that same thought that Charlotte was having about like, hey, is there like more you should know about this? I covered a climate protest, I think last year, and I spoke with someone who was like affiliated with the church, and so I definitely got some sense that they're also involved in some like community engagement, like stuff like that. But
and we love that here on Noxcast.
yeah, so good little featurey piece, and even though it's like the only article that we were able to put, I think it was a good choice.
Yeah, I think I've seen that church before and I've walked by it, and I think it's really cool that that's happening there.
Yeah. I think that brings us to our student life top story, which is also kind of a little feature just about the fact that the end of the year is coming up. A lot of our seniors are preparing to leave the nest. And for a lot of people, there's the potential to kind of fall victim to senior slump or senioritis or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, this article from our staff writer, Tammy, just sort of looks into how people deal with that. And like with all these student life features, I just love getting to hear what people have to say. It's not necessarily, there is the news peg of the fact that, it's this part of the semester, but it's not like there was an event and people went there and they did this and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, hey, how you feeling? Semester's winding down. I know it's tough. Just where you at, like mentally? And I've also been joking, like, so I'm a senior of sorts, but I'm coming back in the fall. I'm still feeling a little bit just burnt. And so for me, definitely it's been important to just like take breaks, find opportunities to go do some, like, for the spring concert was a great example of like, okay, it's a Sunday. I just need to like not do anything other than like, I'm going to get ready. I'm going to go have fun and just breathe. And, I definitely know a lot of people who are in a similar situation.
Yeah. I like articles like this that are like sort of asking a question that's almost, there's no real like actual one answer to it. There's so many different like pieces of advice that people might give and sort of opinions as to how to tackle something like that. But it's also just so difficult because like at the end of the year, there's so many like final year wrap up things going on. There's like, the art and design show that's happening and different majors having like capstones they're finishing up. So it's like, at the same time, when it's like a lot of people are feeling that like slump and like drag of like, oh, I just need this to be over. It's like you gotta sort of snap yourself out of it a little bit and sort of realize like, oh, I have this like massive thing that I gotta wrap up. And from like an Equinox standpoint, like this is the time where it's like, oh, so we have like 10 events to cover here, and then we have 10 different things, and there's like these recitals and these shows and these things, and it's like. So it's like we feel that side of things too, not just from like a student perspective, but also from like a news one. So yeah, interesting piece and good question to ask and good to hear people's thoughts about it.
Yeah, I've also been feeling a lot of burnout, and I think it's mostly after finding out that I'm going to be graduating early. I've kind of started to feel like a senior already, and I feel like I shouldn't, but it's okay. And I really liked reading about other people's like ways that they've avoided that burnout. Yeah, I thought it was really cool to read about that.
Yeah, definitely. And, to add to kind of that news sense of it, we also have, we certainly have people coming from the art world who are involved with the Equinox. Much love to them as they, any of the seniors as they prepare for the showcase. It's the same deal with like, we have some film majors, the film seniors are dealing with capstones, like just everybody's in kind of a frazzled state, or the millions of events like Nate says. Yeah, it's tough to just kind of keep everything together, but I think we're all gonna make it. And I had the thought to do this at the end, but I'll just throw it in now. If you are interested in taking photos for the newspaper, let us know. Reach out to us and save Alana.
Please.
Yeah. Do you have a pitch that you would give to someone who might be interested in doing that?
Yeah, it's really fun, and it's not a ton of work. You can take however many photo assignments you want in a week. You can take 1, you can take 6. And honestly, if you're already going to the event, it's fun to take photos of it and capture the moment.
Definitely. I wouldn't recommend starting out with 6, but definitely.
No.
And yeah, you'd be a published photographer. It's a way to get your work out in front of the campus community, which also I realize can sound scary, but you gotta figure, it's a small community and we're all just looking to document the cool stuff that happens on campus. So
Yeah, and a lot of people, when you go to events, a lot of people love that you're capturing the moment of them just being there. Like, a lot of people just love the photos.
Yeah.
Especially like club meetings and like stuff like that.
Yeah, because, everybody loves to see their work in the paper and know that, like, people care. People want to remember that, hey, you did this cool thing, or you're continuing to work on this cool thing, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, it's been like a huge part of our pitch, definitely, like when we're tabling and stuff, and on Mid-Students Day and during involvement fairs, we always try to talk about, because I feel like there's that misconception almost when people think of like the newspaper, they think, oh, it's just like all words, it's just like a huge wall of text and nothing else. And it's like, well, photos are half of the battle, basically. I mean, like you can have articles without visuals, but it's a lot harder to keep people intrigued when that's the case. So whenever we can supplement with a photo, we do that. If we can't, we do a graphic. And then sometimes we'll have neither, but it's just such a big part of what we do, and like the multimedia aspect of it, especially as like we're going to keep up the newspaper presence, but online as well. There's such like an opportunity to highlight so many different cool things. So please.
All right, you get the pitch, but let us know. And I think we are already at our editorial, which was covering the perspective cuts to the university system coming down from the state. Currently, what has been approved by the state house is a 30% cut, or roughly $50 million to the university system. So pretty substantial. We do a little bit of compare and contrast between that and what Governor Ayotte had proposed, which is about an 8% cut, and just sort of pointing to the fact that, like, 30 seems a little drastic. I feel like maybe we could try to have more of a scale here rather than just saying, nope, we don't need any of that. We'll just ditch that. We've talked about similar things before on the podcast, but it's scary. It's really scary to think about the idea that we're looking at a future, maybe with no public higher ed in the state, maybe just community college. We talked about that too, the sort of disparity between what the governor was recommending for the community college system and the university system. That in particular, during the editorial discussion, I felt the need to add my perspective as somebody who transferred from the community college system to the university system. Transferred in as a junior to Keene State from one of the community colleges in the system. It's great on paper to think about the idea of the community college system being, in a place where it can have what it needs to thrive. But for me, like, realistically, I went to community college so I could go and get my 4-year degree after that. If the university system wasn't viable, I probably wouldn't have gone to community college. And I realize that's all anecdotal, but I think it just illustrates the fact that, like, you can't have that type of disparity and expect for everybody to just, like, accept that and just stay in the state and receive either a subpar education or an incomplete education or an education that they can't afford. Like, it's just, people are going to leave. They're going to leave, and then what do we do? Then there's no teachers, there's no doctors, there's no nothing in New Hampshire. And it's not a good future.
Yeah. Something that I wanted to harp on also during editorial when it got to like my point in the discussion was sort of just a lot of what we hit on in this one sort of is the basis for a lot of other editorials that we do and issues that we talk about on the state level, because a lot of the times where colleges, not just Keene State, but like, recent news from Plymouth about them looking at possibly cutting humanities, things like that. That's because of oftentimes the state's lack of support for higher ed, and that's been no secret. They don't really like spending money all that much in the state. It's a fiscally conservative, yada yada. But I just think, we talked about how if there really has to be a cut made here, Governor Ayotte's 8% cut is probably, you could probably deal with that. But I don't think that there's a lot of waste and inefficiencies as it stands right now. I think, if anything, there needs to be more support. But just coming from the perspective of like, I'm a Keene State student, I think like it's just caused a lot of faculty and staff and administrators to sort of almost go into like this like panic mode because there's so much uncertainty. I know they like had like an opportunity to bus people up to Concord for like a protest against this exact cut. And the hope is from a lot of people that the state Senate will sort of moderate between those two numbers of 30% and 80%. But who knows? I mean, there's just so much that we don't know. But obviously, our hope is that they would sort of heed the call of what USNH Chancellor had said, which is don't cut more than 8%, please. There's not room really for error there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the one other thing I would add is like, once again, that's an instance in which the moral comes into play. Civic engagement, we'll say it till we die. I really do hope that the state Senate is going to be just wise to the fact that the cut that's been approved by the House is untenable. And I would say that this is a great time to find the contacts for your state senator and say, give them a ring or shoot them an email or whatever and say, hey, I really, really would love to see the university system continue to be a thing and be able to offer me the quality education that I understood I was going to receive when I enrolled. And all we can really do is hope from that point. But, great time as ever to just get involved. And with that, I think that is the end already. As always, I would like to extend thanks to the composer of the music for Noxcast, our very own Equinox alum, Zach Keenan, as well as the designer of the graphic for Noxcast, our very own art director, Elijah Fisher, and of course the editor of Noxcast, our very own multimedia director, Jakob Hall. Thank you as well for watching or listening to Noxcast. We will be back next week, as always, with another news recap. And until that time, I've been Charlotte King.
And I've been Nathan Hope. Thank you again to Elena for joining us.
Thank you for having me.